I suppose I just want to ask about that as well, about the child's right budgeting. Can you explain that a bit more, how it might have worked in other jurisdictions? Like, is it, we'll say something like that, is it, you know, is there even from the Child Poverty and Wellbeing Unit, do they have an action plan within each department to say, this is how we're actually going to try to reduce child poverty and deprivation? Like, is it based on outcomes, or do budgets that are given to each department, is that based on how they perform? Like, how does that work, I suppose?
Yeah, no, thank you for your question, and it's a good question because one of the priorities of the Child Poverty and Wellbeing Unit is to look at ways in which there can be a more whole of government approach to the issue of child poverty. So when it does come to budget time, that there is a joined up approach, that one department isn't providing a service that may be taken away from another department, because it can be quite siloed. And I suppose if you look to other countries, New Zealand introduced the Child Poverty Act a number of years ago, and that put a requirement on government that when they're making their annual budgets, that they were doing proper assessments in relation to where the expenditure was going. One of the challenges we have here is that a lot of departments don't actually know how much of their budget is actually allocated to children. So that would be the first step. We need to know how much we're already spending on children, then to look at the effectiveness of that, and then if you're introducing new measures, what is the impact, positive or negative, on children?
And is there, within departments, is there a plan to do that, to look at the impact so far, like what has been spent within each department on children? Or
Yes, so Young Ireland, there's a commitment there in relation to child rights budgeting. There was a pilot in 2019 which took data from a number of different departments to see what was feasible with the existing data that departments hold. That hasn't been progressed, but I understand that is a priority going into 2026 for the department, and I suppose that's something that we'll be looking and watching very closely in relation to that, because it's really important.
Yeah, that's great. And can you see any improvements, we'll say, even like I mean, staffing clearly is a huge issue within the HSE and with TUSLA, and can you see how things, we'll say, like Meitheals have increased kind of that interagency approach, or how that can be resourced more, you know, rather than to go outside, I suppose, TUSLA services, but to look at HSE services like addiction service, how that can, and I know from my own experience that because people on the ground, practitioners, find it hard to attend those Meitheal meetings because they have to do their own work, you know. That is there any way that can be supported more, or how could you see that interagency approach both nationally and locally being improved?
I know it's a really good question. We've been banging that drum for a long time, because interagency cooperation can be transformative for families and for children, and everyone needs to be at the table. So we completely support that. We actually have heard from families who found Meitheal extraordinarily helpful. It's been really powerful and really, really good for families, and it feels very non-judgmental. It's very supportive, which is exactly what you need in terms of dignity and respecting the rights of parents and for children. So I do think it is about assessing what you've just said, assessing the impact of it. How can we grow it? Listening to the families and children who've been through it. How can we make it better? But because, as we all know, early prevention is the absolute key here for every child.
And it's staffing, I think, like just from my own experience, and it's trying to maybe see how there's some model that that it comes part of everyone's work, you know, that it, rather than the way at the moment, I suppose it is that it's up to lead practitioners to make the referrals, but that it's built into everyone's work within all sectors that you're going to attend Meitheals, or there's going to be the provision within your workplace. Would that be something that might be?
Well, the new Childcare Act that they're reviewing at the moment has a specific commitment that says about the duty to cooperate. So there's going to be a statutory duty between agencies to cooperate, and we believe that is absolutely vital. Brilliant. And it's way beyond just sharing information. Sometimes I think people get stuck in that loop. It's about who's best to deliver the services, and that's exactly what I think it intends to do, and I believe there's a lot of energy behind that,
which is great.
Which is great.
And just finally, I just wanted to ask you, saying that you said here that that the full and direct incorporation of the UN Convention on Human Rights into domestic law was, you highlighted the single most thing to promote and protect children's rights. Is there any move to do that? When you said the Child Poverty Act in New Zealand is having an impact, is that something that you'd like to see here?
Yeah, it's a strategic priority of the office to drive full and direct incorporation of the UNCRC into law. Other countries have done it, so Scotland have fully incorporated the text into their law, which means that children can use the courts in relation to their rights if they're not being upheld. They can also, it would be the cultural change, so things like child rights budgeting that we mentioned would be an obligation for the state to implement. And I think we're going to be continuing on that conversation in terms of what that would mean. It's about considering children's rights when decision makers are developing policies and implementing policies.